Hey, it's Whitney from EcoVeganGal.com and welcome back to another Eco Vegan Gal Uncensored. I want to begin this video by saying thank you to everyone who sent me a private response to my last video, which was about bullying and being attacked. I received some amazing messages, emails, all sorts of just even comments on my site all over the place, and I was really blown away. I honestly didn't expect that, and it really meant a lot. It made me realize that it came across more sad than I was. Perhaps I didn't realize it. Maybe I conveyed something that I wasn't even in touch with emotionally. Maybe it struck a chord in some of you. And I really appreciate all of you supporting me in all the different ways that you have and the attention that you've given to what I've had to say. So, thank you. So this video is not only to address my feelings, or I'm drawing a blank here on how I want to say this, not only to address and give thanks to all of you who reached out, and even those who didn't, anyone who watched, I always appreciate that. But it's also just to make a video, because I haven't made one in a while, and I feel like I left on such a sad, depressing note in that last one. Well, this video may be a little bit sad in a sense, but it's also meant to be inspiring. I wanted to say something about what happened in Boston a few days ago. I grew up in Massachusetts, so I spent the majority of my life there, and I went to school in Boston. I actually lived just a few blocks away from where the explosions happened during the marathon. So when I heard about this news, it struck a pretty tender chord within me. I also found myself feeling similarly to how I did when 9/11 happened. I was actually a student in Boston at the time of 9/11, and it was a really frightening time. And I was much younger and vulnerable, and yeah, it was very intense, as it was for most Americans or people around the world. And anytime that we have incidences like this, it's a pretty big trigger. And I wanted to tie it into something that I feel in general that's another trigger for me, something that I've noticed recently, and something that I've started to pick up on and reflect more on and learn more about. And it's the topic of aggression and how we deal with situations. Personally, I don't feel like there's much need in the world for aggression. I don't entirely understand why it's there, to be honest, and I would love your feedback on this. Why does aggression exist? Why are we aggressive to each other? Is it I would assume to protect ourselves. But in the modern world, a lot of the ways that we're aggressive to one another is not necessary. We don't need to protect ourselves. A lot of the aggression is emotional, so we're protecting ourselves emotionally. It's an emotional aggression that we put out to put up emotional walls. What happens then is that we're affecting someone, and a lot of times we're harming someone. Sometimes we're even harming someone we take an aggressive stance on something emotionally and we act out on it physically. So you could take the case of these explosions. Honestly, I haven't followed it much in detail yet, so I don't know what the status is at this point in terms of figuring out the clues and why this happened and who did it. But it's pretty clear to me that this is coming from a place of aggression, right? That's why you would do something like that. You do something aggressive to other people out of anger, out of resentment, out of frustration. And it's very unfortunate that some people choose to take a huge action that would hurt people emotionally, but also physically, and in this case, kill other people and ruin the lives of many others who are now suffering from debilitating physical injuries. So it's incredibly sad. And I think that it has stopped, as it does, unfortunately, with any of these instances, which happen far too often. It makes us all stop and think about why this happened. However, I don't know if enough attention is placed around prevention. A lot of people react with anger, and they talk about what's wrong with the situation, how bad these people were or are. They talk about all the negative aspects of it, how unfortunate it is and how sad it is and how, just angry they are. I personally try to take as much of a positive outlook on things as I can, and I'm definitely not perfect at this. I have my weaknesses for sure. I get angry and frustrated. But I try very hard to bring myself back to a place of love and acceptance and positivity, because I believe that is going to make the biggest impact overall, is if we address things and spin things around into a positive light whenever possible. And in fact, I think it's always possible to do that, even in the most horrible situations. If we look at the world from a peaceful angle, we can, I think, prevent a lot more negativity, because we're not participating in negativity. We're not exerting negativity. And we can look at this mostly on a small scale. It's unfortunate that this type of incident happened, and hopefully anything like this won't happen for a long time. Unfortunately, it seems like horrible things happen way too often, across the entire world. In fact, forgive me that I'm not as educated in events that are happening, but I know that there was some equal, if not worse, tragedy happening, I think, in the Middle East, and another bombing and more kids dying and all of this. And it happened, if not on the same day or the following day, as the Boston tragedy did. And it was just an example of how this happens constantly, right? But my point being is that we can look at it upon ourselves as individuals and how we approach all types of situations. Do we choose to approach it from a positive or negative standpoint, a peaceful or aggressive standpoint? If we check in with ourselves, we know that we have the ability to do it positively all the time. And if you go back to this last video that I did, I don't know why people choose to attack online or attack with their words, which was the case in those scenarios I was in personally. I think a lot of the times it really has nothing to do with me or anybody else involved in those type of situations, and we have to remove ourselves from that as possible, which is what made it somewhat easy for me to get over that. But it still hurts. It still chips away at me. My skin isn't that tough. I don't know if it ever will be. And I've seen this happen a lot on the internet. We just love to attack each other, and it's just so unnecessary. I found myself following some videos, or a series of videos that Oprah had done, and Oprah is, as she is for many, an idol and a mentor and all of that, and I find her interviews so incredibly helpful and insightful and inspiring. And one video I was watching was all about why people are competitive with one another. And for me, it also comes down to that aggression. Sometimes aggression is a form of competition. It's a form of saying, I am right and you are wrong. I am better than you because what I believe, what I am doing, whatever the case may be, is better than what you are doing. And thus, I'm winning, and thus I'm comparing myself to you. I'm competing with you. Unfortunately, some people do this by killing others. That is a form of competition. They want to survive. They want to be the best. They want to be the only one. So some people kill each other. Big generalization there, but if we really get down to the base of it, I think a lot of us could agree that's what happened. And it's such a weird mentality that we have in the United States and all across the world. that we are so obsessed with proving how good we are by showing others how bad they are. And there was a great quote, "It's easy to be king amongst paupers. It's hard to be king amongst kings." And thus, we don't want the playing field to be level. We want to make it so that we rise above and somebody's underneath. And it honestly comes down as the reason for and the motivation for a lot of things that we do as humans. It's like survival of the fittest, I guess. I don't know why it's so ingrained in us and what it is. It's coming back to the beginning of humankind or whatever, and just things that we never worked through. Is this necessary for us to not overpopulate the world or something? Is this, I don't know. I mean, I could spend years of my life researching into the reasons of this. And that's not really my point here. My point is to recognize those things and choose not to be a part of it. Is to recognize that we don't need to feel more powerful than somebody else. A lot of the time that's tapping into the insecurities we're feeling, where we don't feel like we're good enough. We don't feel respected by somebody else. We feel attacked by them. And we've also involved ourselves in the world where this has become acceptable. If you think about that for a moment, a lot of the forms of competition that we have in our world is because it's acceptable. It's because from some way or another we've been encouraged to. And you could say that with a lot of these terrorist attacks or whatever, is happening in this specific case with Boston, for example. For these people, it was acceptable to do that. Otherwise, would they have done it? Or maybe it was just one, hopefully it was just one person. But sadly, it was probably multiple people based on some of the information that I've heard. And again, I'm making some assumptions here, but let's just assume for a moment that it was multiple people involved here. They all thought that this was acceptable, and they likely had other people encouraging them to do it. I mean, that was the case with 9/11, for example. It was a huge group of people, and they were all in on it together. So collectively, we're also responsible for choosing what we accept, for what we say is okay. So I'm encouraging all of you to remember that it shouldn't be okay to be harmfully competitive. I think a little competition here and there, and I get competitive myself, it can be okay, but if we check in with ourselves, and I catch myself doing this often. When I get competitive, I feel like this burning feeling inside that doesn't feel very good. And I just go. And you know what? There's room for all of us. There is in many forms of the way. Nature will play its course too. Physically, there's room for all of us because unfortunately we're not invincible, right? Until we figure that out. But for now, we're not invincible. So our time will come. So why can't we all just lead the lives that we want and allow the peace for everybody else there? That is a huge world peace message there, but if we can look at it on a smaller scale with how we treat one another, whether it's online, whether it's in person with our friends, and whether it's on a large scale about how we treat communities and big groups and people from other cultures and other parts of the world, other religions, other perspectives, how we choose to view them internally and externally and how we treat them is something that we all have control of. And we have to remember how it feels to be on the other end of that. I was attacked and bullied, and it hurt me. Was the person that was doing, or the people that were doing that to me considering me? I don't know. Were the people that planted the explosions in Boston really considering the global effect that they were going to have? The sad thing is they probably were, and they didn't care. And that, again, is a whole problem on its own. But we can change it, little by little, person by person. And that's why I made this video. I look forward to your thoughts as always. Thanks for watching.